We are now in part 3 of our discussion of Kantian morals of freedom. Here we're going to discuss the examples of suicide and slavery. We're going to discuss the distinction between intentions and consequences. And we're going to discuss the famous shopkeeper example from Kant. Kant argues that in choosing suicide, a person treats themselves as a means to the goal and or purpose of desire to stop suffering. In the act of suicide, one chooses to treat oneself as a thing rather than as a person. To treat oneself with dignity and respect, worthy of a rational being, would require to act for the sake of continual practice of one's rationality, or to be more precise, of one's freedom as a rational being. With suicide, rationality and freedom is not for their suicide, for their sake that suicide is chosen. Thus, Kant argues that just as it is our duty to not steal, murder, and lie, it is also our duty not to suicide. Unless, of course, one is terminally ill and are experiencing such suffering that one cannot continue to exercise one's rationality and freedom. Kant would say the same with regard to slavery. If one chooses slavery or any other act that produces the same effect, thereby terminating the exercise of one's rationality, since one is not capable of making decisions for oneself as a slave, then one treats oneself as a thing, useful for satisfaction of desires, rather than as a person whose highest goal and dignity is to continue to exercise rational choosing and the freedom that belongs to rational choosing. For example, one may choose to work under such conditions that one becomes incapable of rational decision making for oneself due to injury, exhaustion, probable death, etc. But by doing so, one does not make a moral choice worthy of a being of dignity. The cause of that choice may be the unfortunate circumstances of desperation, social, psychological, economic, and so on, that one finds oneself in. But that is precisely why Sandel, contrary to libertarianism, criticizes such choices as voluntary, but not free. And it is also why there's a moral duty from all rational beings to work on ending such constricting circumstances through reform of corrupt institutions, income redistribution, assistance of others, etc. Thus, Kantian critique of libertarianism employed by Sandel, there it is. Kantian critique of libertarianism employed by Sandel. Not all unobstructed choices are therefore moral and worthy of respect. One may choose to treat human beings, others, or oneself as useful things rather than as persons of intrinsic worth and dignity that must be respected. In this sense, Kant argues that morality or lack thereof resides in our intentions or motives rather than consequences. Here, Kant's famous example of the shopkeeper is to the point that it is intentions rather than consequences that make an action moral or not. If an inexperienced consumer walks through a shopkeeper's door, the shopkeeper may charge this client more than others. What would make this act immoral, according to Kant, is that the shopkeeper could not do so without lying to the client. If the shopkeeper told the client that that is what is happening, the client would, of course, leave. Now, the shopkeeper may overcharge the inexperienced client or not. If he does not overcharge the client, Kant argues that we still do not know whether the shopkeeper acted morally or not. He may have not overcharged the client from respect for humanity and rationality in the client, or he may not have overcharged the client for the sake of shopkeeper's own advantage. If the word gets out that he takes advantage of clients any chance he gets, people would look for other shops. Thus, morality resides in intentions. This is also Kant's critique of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism claims that morality resides not in intentions, but in consequences. In this light, we may also bring up the golden rule, the command to act toward others as one would like them to act toward oneself. If the golden rule is practiced for the sake of beneficial consequences, even if beneficial consequences for everyone, then the practitioner of the golden rule does not act morally. The practice of golden rule is only moral if it is done with the intention to respect every person's rationality, dignity, and freedom. This critique of the golden rule is yet another Kantian criticism of utilitarianism.